Amen. You guys can be seated, and if you've got your Bibles, you can turn to Psalm 39. If you don't have it, that's okay. It will be on the screen. Psalm 39. We're not going to read through it all at once. We're going to read through each piece as we go to it. This is it's a great psalm. I've really enjoyed reading it and spending some time studying it and just meditating on it. It's really, as you can see on the title, a prayer of realization. You see David kind of go and almost begin in a certain frame of mind, and then things shift dramatically by the end of it. But I want to start with verses 1 through 3, where we really see David get a hold of himself. And that's what we all need to do, is you need to get a hold of yourself. Sometimes we just need to do that. Look at what David says in verses 1 through 3. I said, I will guard my ways that I may not sin with my tongue. I will guard my mouth with a muzzle so long as the wicked are in my presence. I was mute and silent. I held my peace to no avail. My distress grew worse. My heart became hot within me. As I mused, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. Now think about what David is going through as he's trying to get a hold of himself here. Obviously, there's something that has David going. Something's got him worked up. Something's got him angry. Something's got him frustrated. But look at how he purposes to be in control of this. He said, I will guard my ways that I might not sin with my tongue. I will guard my mouth with a muzzle so long as the wicked are in my presence. In other words, whoever it is that's making him mad, whoever's angering him, he's purposed, I'm not going to respond verbally to this right now. And then he affirms, I was mute and silent. I held my peace. But then he says, to no avail. His distress grew worse. Have you ever been there? You know, you're bursting at the seams to say what you really want to say. But he said his heart became hot as he mused, the fire burned. Okay? He's stewing on that. Right? He's just thinking over it, thinking on it and thinking on it and thinking on it, and it's making him get worse and worse and worse. Sometimes you're going to have people that anger you. You're going to have situations that frustrate you. You're going to be in David's shoes. And sometimes you just need to get a hold of yourself. I don't know what you need to take a deep breath, count to 10 backwards. Some of you might need to count to 100. Whatever you need to do, deal with it internally before externally. Okay, and that's what we're going to see David do. He takes it to the Lord in prayer and allows God. God doesn't even answer his prayer in terms of this desire to deal with the situation or the people. God changes his heart, which is really what prayer is about anyway. It's about God dealing with us, not really our circumstances. And so as we talk about dealing with this internally, I want to remind you that means deal with it internally, not just stew on it. Okay, just keeping it bottled up inside is not the same as dealing with it and processing it internally and with the Lord. So number one, get a hold of yourself. Whenever something's going on that's bugging you, it's working you up, just get a hold of yourself. Secondly, get a new perspective. Okay, your perspective has got to shift from the way you're seeing it to the way that God sees it. Okay, you've got a hold of yourself. Now ask Jesus to help you see it the way he sees it. Look at what David says here in verses 4 through 6. O Lord, make me know my end and what is the measure of my days. Let me know how fleeting I am. Now remember, Stace, if you could bump it back to verses 1 through 3 again. Remember how he ended that. He was worked up. He was stewing on it. He said, I mused and my anger burned. It got worse. The fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. These are the first words he's uttering after all this stewing, after all this working over it, after all this getting worked up. Back to 4 through 6. Lord, make me know my end. And what is the measure of my days? Let me know how fleeting I am. Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath. Surely a man goes about as a shadow. Surely for nothing they're in turmoil. Man heaps up wealth and does not know who will gather it. When we think about our life and what it really is, most of these things, whether it's people or issues or circumstances, really just aren't that big of a deal. I mean, really think about how fleeting our life is. It's here one day and gone the next. And most of the things that you look back on that were so consuming are really pretty foolish and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I mean, to think about how we respond to the things the way that we do when you look back on it. I mean, will those things even matter when you die? Probably 99% of them won't. And yet we let them wreck us in so many different ways. But ask yourself that. When there's a certain situation going on, just, you've gotten a hold of yourself, you've kind of regrouped. Lord, help me see this from your eye. What does this really look like from an eternal perspective? My life is about that long in eternally, in an eternal perspective. How much does this one little thing matter? Does it matter? And as you begin to get this perspective from God, you'll also get a renewed focus. Okay, your perspective changes. You begin to see things differently. But now you've got to focus differently. You've got to kind of zero in on this thing. Try to really see it for what it is or what it isn't. And that's what we see David doing here in verses 7 through 11, that it's not even really about that issue or those people, whatever it is or whoever they are. He says, and now, O Lord, for what do I wait? What am I really waiting for? Am I waiting for you to deal with these people? Am I waiting for you to fix the situation? My hope is in you. Deliver me. Notice he doesn't say deliver me from all of my enemies, deliver me from all of this bad stuff going on. He says deliver me from all my transgressions. Do not make me the scorn of the fool. I am mute. I do not open my mouth, for it is you who have done it. Remove your stroke from me. I'm spent by the hostility of your hand. When you discipline a man with rebukes for sin, you consume like a moth what is dear to him. Surely all mankind is a mere breath. Notice he talks about God rebuking him for sin and delivering him from his transgressions. David realized whatever was going on, his own sin and sinfulness brought this about. You ever do that? You realize this is miserable, and then you're like, wait a minute. This is really kind of my fault. I got myself into this mess. And God is letting me experience the consequences of my own sinfulness. David realized that. And so for us, we've got to focus more on our own sin and our own sinfulness than necessarily what the issue is. We got to realize that you and your response are far more important than issues and circumstances. And that's true of the vast, overwhelming majority of our lives. Who we are and how we respond is so much more important. I mean, think of something like if you're in a game, you're on an athletic team, maybe you're playing football and you score the winning touchdown, or you're playing basketball and you have a chance to take the final shot. Now, most of us would think the most important thing is whether you make the shot or not. Because if you make it, your team wins, and if you miss it, they lose, and maybe that's a championship riding on it. But suppose it is. Suppose it's a championship riding on it. Does it matter in the grand scheme of things whether you win or lose the championship? Not really. But how you respond either way does matter. Suppose you make the shot. Do you respond pridefully, gloat over the team that you just beat? get arrogant that you're so great. If you miss it, does it wreck you because you feel like a failure and you're shamed and embarrassed and destroyed because of a game? The ways that we respond absolutely do have great significance for who we are from a kingdom perspective. The details, the circumstances are pretty irrelevant. And that's why David can come back to this thing and say, basically, surely all mankind is a mere breath. In other words, Lord, you're dealing with my sin, and help me to see that and to focus in on that, because the rest of these things really don't even matter all that much. And I would encourage us to really pray that God would help us to see with that perspective and that kind of focus what the issues really are. Because I think if we're genuine in our time with the Lord and really humbling ourselves before him, he's going to be dealing with our hearts far more than he's dealing with and working in our circumstances. Because our heart and the way we respond is far, far, far more important. Lastly, we need to get a dose of reality. This is where things finally hit home for David. He settled into what really is the case. He says, "Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Hold not your peace in my tears. For I am a sojourner with you, a guest, like all my fathers. Look away from me that I may smile again before I depart and am no more." And what he's saying, he doesn't really want God to leave him alone in his entirety. He wants God to stop letting these circumstances from his sinful consequences and whatever discipline God is bringing because of his sin. God, I can't be at peace until I'm done dealing with this. But he said, I'm a sojourner with you, a guest like all my fathers. If we would get that perspective and understand the reality of it, that this world is not our home, that this world and its systems, its kingdoms, its ways, we shouldn't let them mess them up the way that they do. Nobody wants to deal with COVID. This is, it's challenging, but ultimately it's irrelevant. It's a thing that's going to come and it's going to go, and we're going to move on. And even if we die in the midst of it, it had no eternal bearing. Now, the way we respond to people and the way we get frustrated or whatever does, but keep in mind, we're just passing through. We're sojourners. We're pilgrims. We're travelers. This isn't our home. Though it is our final destination, we're going to spend eternity on the renewed earth. Eternity in heaven is kind of a misnomer. Unless you look at it as a blending of heaven and earth where things merge together into one. But it's not this eternity in the clouds. It's going to be eternity on the new earth in the presence of God. The earth was made for people, and we're going to inhabit it forever once it's fixed. And we're fixed. But in terms of this life, we're just passing through it. It's temporary. And most of the things with it are not important enough to let us, to get us down as much as they do. But the other important thing in terms of reality is not just that we're a sojourner and we're a guest like all of our fathers, but notice he says, I'm a sojourner with you. We're just passing through this life, but we're passing through it with Jesus. And that's our reality. Even when we don't feel like he's there, even when we don't think he's there, we're not sure if he's there, we can be absolutely confident that he is. He's with us. He said he'd never leave us or forsake us. So we know that we know that we know he's with us. And that's the ultimate reality we need to settle in our prayers is, Lord, you're with me. And I'm with you. Help me to get over this, whatever this circumstances is, but I just want to be aware of your presence and with you always.